Okay, cool. So we need, I'm just trying to think here. Oh yeah, I wanted to see if that Syson's graph got updated or refreshed. Because from my side, I didn't see it update.
Yeah, I hit refresh yesterday. It's got the data from the last couple of days in it now.
Let me just check it here. I don't know. I guess I had to leave for my appointment and then I stopped watching it to see if it was done refreshing. Sometimes it takes
No,
a
I'm not
long
really
time.
like so when I apply a filter, like a date filter to the graph on my end, does it do that for everybody, or does everyone have their own personal preference that syncs when they log in?
Those top level filters, I'm fairly certain are individual. So you would
Okay.
have to tell someone like set your date
So me
range to 2023, January 2023 or whatever. It wouldn't propagate.
okay, so me refreshing the graphs probably didn't change anything for anyone else then.
It does say it was refreshed 20 hours ago. So I think when you refresh
Hmm.
that core data, it goes and gets it. But however I
Okay.
had mine configured would be different from yours.
Hmm.
You can just hard code. I think you can, there's a way to say ignore the settings and like hard code it into the query and the each panel.
Right.
But yeah, for me, I'm not really, I'll just share my screen. Mine's kind of useless because it's all smashed over. Like
Oh yeah.
January's got a lot, right? But it's got way too much here on the graph.
I set mine to just the last 90 days, and that makes it a little easier to read. Um,
Yeah. We could probably
60
even just
days
do
might even be better.
30 for
Yeah,
this one because it's your work. Let's
yeah.
just see.
I
But yeah,
had mine
see,
initially
it's
set to this month, but after it rolled over to February 1st, then it suddenly was useless again because there was no data for February. Um,
there it goes. So yeah, we had a little action back here with testing and then coming through. I don't know what to compare this to, but it is kind of cool seeing it going up and getting this many clicks.
yeah. And I have a merge request in review right now to add the flyout menu options for the merge requests to the click tracking. So right now they're not fully represented here. That merge request one would be higher, I assume.
The two
Yeah.
individual ones. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Good catch that you noticed that. Last
I
minute
was
addition.
trying to see if these are sorted by size, but they're not. So it kind of looks like in terms of usage, projects is the biggest,
Yeah.
MRs and groups. This is groups. Yeah, are kind of in the, I guess I have to look. Oh yeah, so MRs is bigger, groups is just right on its tail. But yeah, it looks like projects is the big one.
Yeah,
Funnily,
this
it's
is, I
also
think it's
pretty
sorted
much
by,
the
it's
it's
ordered the same way as the sidebar is, I think.
yeah, I was about to say it's I think it's the same order as the menu items are,
Yeah,
or we just
how
brought
did
it
that
in a good
happen?
order from the beginning.
I think that's just how I put it in the query, and it must have just taken it
Uh,
in order.
Okay.
I think,
I don't have edit.
I mean, I suppose this is how we want it, though. We want to have the most query or the most clicked on ones near the top, right? I mean, maybe that doesn't matter, but it kind of turned out mostly that way, with issues maybe
Yeah.
being the outlier.
It would be cool to compare this over time to the same left side. I guess these don't actually exist, but we already have kind of trends on left nav and like which things get clicked the most. It is always like issues and MRs. So it's
Mhm.
kind of cool seeing the two. I like that to-dos is there too, because that's new. That's not on any other left bar. But getting a ratio of how many get clicked here compared to our current top nav to do would be
Yeah.
cool, like the volume between the two and how much this one is being used.
I could probably throw together a graph because we do track clicks on the top nav for the equivalent items for like to-do list and issues and assigned merge requests and things like that, and we can see how they compare as far as people clicking it on the left nav versus on the top.
Yeah, I wonder too, where's my, I'll stop sharing my screen. I might be able to just do the comparison off existing graphs and just do it by hand too. Like if we don't want to get in there and kind of put them both in the same graph, we could just kind
Mhm.
of hover on each or take, you can export to spreadsheet and kind of see what the difference is. But yeah, this is cool seeing those events lighting up. So where are we at with, we've got that Sisense app. Oops, I'll put this under Kristen. Where are we at with what's happening right now? In terms of this release?
I just pasted a bunch of stuff into the notes here.
Oh, there it is.
Hopefully it didn't get I guess the indentation got a little weird, but
there it goes.
So I have a bunch of merge requests that are either in flight or just recently merged. The top nav events, based on the stuff we discussed last week, just auditing those, adding some event tracking where it was previously missing, and a couple of like the things in the help drop down, and the a few other things, as well as like the new, like the edit, frequent items, buttons and all that stuff. So I've added events to all of those, as well as adding the common navigation underscore top property to all the events in the top nav in this merge request, which is currently in review. I fixed
Does that include the project, that weird, like putting the project and group names? Is that one on that one?
So that's the second point I have. That
Okay.
was that bug I fixed in a separate merge request. That is already merged. So that should make those event labels more predictable and easier to query now. I have not yet done, we were going to differentiate because they were all tagged as frequent items, even if you entered a search query, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I have not fixed that differentiation yet. That'll be a forthcoming merge request. But at least it's not putting private data into our license graphs, our whatever, anymore. So that's the important part.
Yeah, and where do we document how to change those queries? Because we're gonna have these and statements, no, or statements, ors, where event like, where it starts with the old one that was the bug, or it is the new one.
Yeah.
I feel like we should start getting that into a list so that we can translate it over to the data team to fix all of the current base queries.
Yeah. I suppose all I did was truncate the end of it. So we could just, instead of saying equals, well, I guess we probably already had like a query that looked like label is like this, and it had like
It
a
was
little
is.
percentage. Yeah.
It's and it's broken, but if it was like with the percentage, that would get us a lot more events in. But yeah, all of it's currently broken because it's saying is, and it's stopping the event name before the project name that was tacked on.
Okay. So yeah, basically just using like and having the percentage would do that for the historical data. Now we can use an is for data going forward because it will just be the same label.
But we need both to get historical where the data was bunked and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's an issue open for that, or if there's a graph where you know where it's broken, and I could just hop in and try and
yeah.
The trouble is, it's
I'll post the issue right here. I'll post the issue. So let's wait and see. I don't know the best way, like you're saying, like we need to start writing the spec. So maybe on an issue description, we start listing all of the things that we'll need to change as we get them one by one, and then the data team would implement that because they're asking me what needs to change in the SQL. So as we find something, we could either like, I don't know, one-off fix it in real time in the data, like this one, we go create the data issue or fix it. And then the next one, and then the next one, or if we aggregate them all, like 10 changes, boom, here's the batch. I don't know what the best way would be to track it. I linked to this comment where they're asking for what do you want to change about that big query that they have that builds our data set? Provide me with a list of the new events and what they're asking.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd have to know what's missing to know what to tell them to add. So I gotta
For
I'll read through
that,
this issue and comment on it. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that frequency one that we had, or the project, frequent projects and groups, and then
Yeah,
everything that gets added that isn't in it would be, and if we could go out with that, remember we were saying maybe use that other attribute across every event.
yeah,
They could just
yeah.
change their query to be so simple because it would be just like where that one thing equals whatever we change it to.
Right, and that's the goal. You were kind of talking about modifying the queries to capture legacy data that we were missing, which is maybe a separate topic almost, um,
They're
as far as like
both.
reaching back.
Because reaching
But
back, if we fix this error, it's going to bump all our graphs up by millions, I think. And I
oh
think
yeah,
we'll hit
yeah,
our goals if we even just get this one in.
yeah. No, I agree. So if we fix that one where the label was not being queried correctly, that will fix our historical graphs. But as far as like I just added events to a couple of like things in the help drop down that didn't have events before. There's no way to add that to our historical query. Um, so some
But
of
we
these things
should,
aren't gonna, but
yeah,
but going
we have to add it
forward,
to the whole queue, though. We do need it to go onto our PI graph so that that
yeah,
number jumps up here in February.
yeah. And so what we'll do with that is basically if we're just trying to get a total number of clicks on the top nav bar, is just have that whole complicated query we have for our historical data, and then just say or property equals navigation underscore top, and that will capture everything going forward. Um, I was hoping that that would be merged today so that it would be cleanly like on the 1st of February, um, but yeah, in any case, yeah, that should be
Okay,
simple going forward.
cool. Yeah, and working with the team just so they know that main or statements that have to be in the
Mhm.
in the core data set. Um, I was gonna, so the next one on metadata for tracking events to segregate users. This was a topic I wanted to ask. Like maybe we should just drop cohorts in any of the user tracking stuff other than whether they're got the toggle on or not.
Okay.
Because I think we're running out of time.
Well, we had an issue. We wanted to track specifically GitLab.org users as a specific cohort, and I was just talking with Sam in my previous meeting about how to do that. Now that we have the ability to enable feature flags by group, um, that is something that we can do and track in the
Okay,
metadata in the same way. So if
that's
that's still
cool.
a useful metric, that's something that's not
Yeah.
too difficult to do.
So would just funnel like the feature flag name down
Yeah,
as like a consistent piece of data. So if I'm clicking all around a nav, if I am in a feature flag state, it would be there.
yeah. We could decide if the user is part of GitLab org or not, and track that separately for each
Okay.
event.
So I think that's good. If we can't, the correctness of all the events, I would prioritize above that. But if it's like easy to do, I think we should just go for it. Any of those consistent things we can just add in that are kind of simple across every event.
Mhm.
Um,
Um,
when I was doing this on like a different product in the past, I worked with Sisense and like our front end team made these things called data packs, like 3 variables in a almost like an include that just got like it was like a backpack that got put on every event.
mhm.
And so they let's say you wanted to change the feature flag stuff or the um maybe like the high level or like the version of the navigation, you'd be doing it just in one spot and then every event would just pull in that
Yeah,
the
we have
variable
something
list.
we have something like that in the code that kind of sets up Snowplow in the front end. It automatically adds a few things that are always added. Mostly it's like things about like the browser and the size of the window and things like that. But it also well, for instance, now I've set it up to add the state of the feature flag, not the feature flag, whether the new nav is enabled or not. But we could add any arbitrary data to that we
Okay.
want to be present on every event.
That's cool. So technically, if we were to change this SciSense graph or duplicate it, make a new one, there could be one that cuts by toggle on or off, even if, I mean, your work isn't connected to the toggle, but
Right. But I mean, maybe the implementation of your work will be slightly different with the toggle on, and we want to differentiate, how people interact with it with the new nav enabled or not. But yeah, basically we can cut on that for anything now.
That's cool. So yeah,
I do
let's
have
start documenting that. So we need to get somewhere, even like an issue to just start it. So we have all the rules, because that's super cool.
Yeah. One of the other things we had an issue in the issue where we were talking about tracking the state of the new nav toggle. You also wanted to track whether a user had ever had the toggle enabled, like the historical data about that. Is that something we still want to do?
Let's kill that. That's too hard, I think.
Okay.
Unless we
that's
do
the
it
only
from
thing that
the
was preventing me from
back end.
closing that issue. We could, like, we did leave the preference as like a what was the word, ternary state. It was like a 3-state. It's either true, false, or null. So we can track whether the user has expressed a preference. For instance, in the future, if we enable it by default for a certain group of people, we will be able to determine if they have toggled it off or on manually versus just had it on by the default. If that's something that's useful to track, I can find a way to add that to the metadata too. But
yeah, if they ever had it on.
So basically, it
Yeah,
would tell us if they're using the default that was decided for them versus whether they have turned it on or off manually. That's something that we can track.
Maybe that, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the use case for that one.
Yeah, that's the
Gmail
thing
might be
too.
cool of it, like monthly active users of the navigation, like if they used it that month, which is like a common in product, pretty much everyone uses Gmail for everything. If they did one thing with it, they get into that metric. Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here. But yeah, which one is that in the whole list here in the Epic?
Let me pull up the Epic. I have it in one of these.
I just shared screen.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
one
So
this one?
navig segment data. Yeah, that's the one.
If the new nav is on.
Yep. So we list ever had toggle on and ever had toggle off. That's not present, but the currently has toggle on or off is done.
Okay. Current, yeah. So if I click today, it's gonna know whether my toggle was on or off.
Yep.
But if I ever, I don't know, like how are you gonna do that? How would you do a historical without the DB or something
Well, that's the
to
thing. We
know?
couldn't necessarily do it. We could do an approximation of it. Like if we could tell that the navigation is on by default for them, but they have turned it off, we know that at one point it was probably on, and we could then, treat it as such.
Okay.
So it's kind of like making inferences based on the current state of things.
Right.
And I
So it
don't know how
wouldn't be
useful that
real.
information actually is or not. But otherwise, yeah, if we wanted to actually tell for certain whether they had it on or off in the past, and they're contrary to what their current state is, we would have to save it in the database somehow.
Could we have like just a graph from the back end that is those 3 states, like a query against current users that have it on by,
Yeah.
what was it, like on by default, off, or
Yeah, it would be default, which could be on or off manually. Yeah.
Is that something you would build out, or is that something like Thomas would need to do?
I think that's a little back end heavy. I'd have to, yeah, I'm not sure where we'd start with that. I need to,
Yeah, me
I don't know.
me currently neither, so I'm also not sure how. Do we like have we similar examples where we send like statistics from some database query to Sisense, or is that a uncommon thing? I'm not even sure about that.
I'm sure there
I
is
don't know.
some way to do that. I imagine we track certain back end metrics over time, maybe like, I don't know. Trying to think of an
Yeah.
example. But I'm sure we do this somewhere. I should probably just contact the product intelligence team or the data team or something and see where we've done something like that in the past and use that as a model.
I feel
Yeah, I
like there
still need
are
to think
connectors
it.
to our DB, but I don't know precisely what to tell you.
Also, I'm wondering if or how we then would detect or determine if what a user's default is, because currently like we have a table with rows of users or user preferences, and that is true, false, or nil. But if we have
Yeah.
some code that says if member is part of that 50% rolled out feature flag, that it's not something that is super easily queryable from the database at the same time. So
Yeah. We would have
uh,
to find a way to kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, we would have to be able to query the feature flag status in a way that could be kind of combined with that. I don't know how doable that would actually be. Because like we were going to use, well, we haven't even really done this where we were going to, one option for setting the default state was to use a feature flag, right? Uh, we, I guess I don't know. Do we imagine that we're going to have a situation where we have the toggle enabled for everybody, but we have the default set for a certain cohort to be default enabled and set default disabled for a different cohort? Or is that overcomplicating things?
I think that when we move from the GitLab cohort into like production, maybe defaulted to off and then
Yeah,
defaulted to on. I don't know that we would need to track to that level. I think we would just bring GitLab along with us to production, right? And kind of lose the other feature flag, the one that just had GitLab in it. But I don't know.
yeah, I don't know either. A lot of this depends on how we choose to implement that, how we choose to implement the setting of the default, and whether that's queryable in a way that will let us generate these statistics to send to Sisense.
We can always remove GitLab org events because that's a common thing in a lot of the Sisense graph. Like just remove our users. There's like and statements that do that. So if we wanted to
Okay.
move forward and just at least from the event side, cut GitLab's usage out, we could do that.
Is there an example you can show me that where we do that, where we cut out GitLab org users from our Sisense graphs? If we're already doing that, then I don't need to implement my own solution. If there's a clean way to just query,
I think
events by GitLab users versus not.
they might have that a lot on the plan on that plan. Yeah. So like here on this plan scratch pod
Mhm.
as an example. So here's all the normal, like the to-do toggle. They've got .org split out, and so you could just delete it if you wanted to while you're looking at the data.
So now I guess I saw that and I thought that this was so I wasn't sure if this was like GitLab.org users or
This is
events
the
that relate
namespace.
to the namespace. Because that's like
Yes.
differentiating clicks in GitLab
Right.
or slash GitLab versus clicks by members of this
True.
group, which is different.
Yeah, it's Yeah, you're right. It's interacting with that names with that group or whatever. So it's not
Okay.
exactly the same, but maybe the same thing could happen where the group users are not GitLab or something like that. I don't know if this
Yeah.
exists at the user level,
Okay.
but that would be something to talk to Data about and check.
Yeah.
I have to jump to my one-on-one here.
Okay.
Is there any other? I'm just trying to see if we jumped through anything. Any other gotchas before I leave? I might kill the whole meeting.
I was going to ask really quickly. I know there's the navigation weekly sync in about an hour. Do you want me to be present in that meeting? Otherwise, I have a lunch engagement I might go to early.
I think it's okay. I can review and bring the charts over. And that
Okay.
one's already it's recorded anyways, so
Okay.
yeah,
Then
I think
I'll
that's
just watch the
fine.
recording later.
Yeah. Cool.
All
All
right.
right, thanks. Thanks everyone. Happy
Yep.
1st of Feb.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Yeah. See ya.